Oh, right. Good evening, everybody. It's 5 to 7, but as everybody's here, we might as well start. I'll go straight into the meeting, which is apologies for absence, but everyone's here. Councillor Shinnick.
Sorry, Councillor Shinnick, yeah.
Beg your pardon. Thank you. Agenda item 2, minutes. Have we all read the minutes and I would approve them? Correct? Okay, that's me. I'll second that. Items of urgent business. I haven't received any items of urgent business. Is there any items of urgent business I should know about? No, that's right. So, any declarations of interest, please? Item 4. Okay, and I don't have any either. So we're going to do straight on to DI Tanya Steele, who's going to speak to us, giving us a verbal update on Operation Raptor. The floor is yours, Tanya.
Thank you very much. Oh yes, good evening everyone. I'm a detective inspector from Essex Police and I work on Operation Raptor. So for those who don't know, Essex Police have a county-wide team and it's under the code name or the operation name Raptor. And we are dedicated to tackling county lines, but we specifically focus on those groups that present the highest harm to the community. So there are a number of Raptor teams stationed at various locations around the county. And these Raptor teams are embedded within the Essex Police Serious Violence Unit. And we follow this, what we call a triple P model. And so this encompasses a number of elements, namely prevent, protect and pursue. So this model allows the team to provide proactive and preventative capability to reducing the harm that can be caused to Essex communities from county line criminality. So I wanted to just explain and clarify the definition of a county line in relation to the work that's undertaken by the Raptor team. So it's in alignment with the county's definition, the government's definition of county lines, and it's provided by the Serious Violence Strategy of 2018. So more specifically, it says it's a term used to describe gangs and organised criminal networks involved in exporting illegal drugs into one or more importing areas within the UK, using dedicated mobile phone lines or other form of deal lines. And so these groups are likely to exploit children and vulnerable adults to move and store the drugs and money, and they will often use coercion, intimidation, violence, including sexual violence or weapons. So that's the government's definition, and it's all about moving those drugs from one area in the UK to another. So I just wanted to explain that element of it for clarification, because therefore the definition of gang in relation to how the community understand it might be more specific. So the term gang in relation to the work of the Raptor team is quite specific as it relates directly to the county line activity. And while work in relation to the broader term of gang and any corresponding criminal activity wouldn't come under the work of the Operation Raptor, it is obviously addressed by other teams within Essex Police. So then in relation to the work that we do on Operation Raptor, so my teams are focused on the investigations, or we prioritise the investigations of suspects who control the county lines, who we believe pose the highest harm and risk. So the Raptor teams identify the lines that present the highest threat, harm and risk. And this assessment is based on categories that might include things like exploitation, violence and child sexual exploitation. So our work looks at identifying those individuals and apprehending the offenders who control the county lines. More specifically, we focus on those individuals who play significant roles in relation to these drug offences that are being investigated. So our workload then, that these are complex investigations. They can take months to progress, but it's the focus of the Raptor teams that is on the case building and the preparation work that goes into these investigations, these cases. And it's because of this work that we're able to sort of prove higher culpability in terms of trying to tackle those individuals that are controlling the lines. It's because we believe that tackling individuals who are controlling it will have a greater impact on the activity of the county line as a whole. Quite often, we will be in a position of charge ready. So when we come to arrest a suspect, we will have our case prepared, and we'll be in a good position once we've spoken with them and interviewed them to be able to charge. So we put forward our best case where possible, and this is to ensure that we've got the highest, most appropriate sentence that the courts can allocate. So there is also in line with the Triple P model, this prevent and absolutely partnership working. So county lines, to use a phrase, have a business model, I suppose, where these gangs recruit young, vulnerable people to do the work for them, and so thus making it more difficult to identify and apprehend the people who are actually controlling the lines. So it's through this prevent, prepare, protect, and pursue approach that we can work to identify and apprehend individuals in control of county lines, but also equally important, we can tackle vulnerability. So, for instance, if Raptor were to identify a young person working for the county line, they would be arrested and dealt with as per legislation and as per police policy. However, through partnership working, we may be able to signpost them or refer them to relevant support, and that's in a bid to prevent reoffending and reduce vulnerability. So it's with the help of partners and also through the Essex Police Violence and Vulnerability Unit that we're able to do our best to reduce vulnerability. And I'm aware that there are some programs with young people in Thurrock to increase this engagement and awareness. And of course, in relation to preventative measures, there are also gang injunctions. Although they're, I guess, often seen as an enforcement option, they can also be used as a preventative element. So the court orders aim to not only prevent the subjects of the gang injunctions from causing harm and nuisance to others, but they can also be used to steer them away from dangerous situations where they could possibly come to harm, and maybe give them an opportunity to reflect on their behaviour and change direction. And while gang injunctions, while they're effective because of the stringent conditions that they can carry, they are time-consuming in relation to the preparation of the case papers that go before the court to gain those injunctions. But I think this is just evidence of the dedication of the Raptor teams and the ability to use more than one sort of tactic to tackle the issues. So while Raptor identifies high harm county lines and it pursues the individuals controlling the lines to bring them to justice and prevent further harm, I don't think that we can just solve this problem through enforcement alone. It's a complex issue, and we do rely on the support of our community and the support of our partners to show that gang life doesn't pay and that there are more sort of positive alternatives. Thank you. I was just going to keep it sort of very very brief for now, and then take any questions.
Right, thank you, Tanya. First of all, I understand Councillor Ralph wishes to ask a question.
Thank you for that. Do you have any sort of numbers of successful prosecutions within Thurrock over Operation Raptor?
I haven't got the numbers. I haven't got the numbers to hand. I might be able to sort of deal with that offline and then get that back to you. In what time frame would you be looking at?
Yeah, sort of in a month's time would be fine. Obviously, we've got Christmas coming up, so I don't want you sort of working over Christmas on the numbers. So, yeah, I think we've got a meeting on our next work plan, so we can do it as a briefing note, Chair, if that is okay.
Yes, we can do that.
The other question is, you reference partners more within the preventative measures of the county lines. What sort of partners are you working with?
Community partners, sort of reroute and partners like that. So while Raptor works in the area of enforcement, and I've referenced partners in terms of the perhaps in terms of when we're sort of apprehending offenders and then looking at opportunities for them. But actually, the partnership working and the people who could speak more specifically about partnerships actually work within the serious violence unit, and they come from other departments. So Raptor would predominantly focus on the enforcement, and the partnership working would come with safeguarding those individuals that come into contact with the Raptor teams in the short term.
Michelle, I think you've got your hand up. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, I think Cheryl was first, and then I can give you a bit of an answer on partners if that's helpful.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I can't see Cheryl on the screen. She's buried behind one of our screens. All right, Cheryl, do you want to say something first, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. It was just in relation to timescales. I'm just double checking. I think Tanya was meaning timescales as in reporting timescales, so that she could tell you the results within a given period of time. I just wanted to clarify that just to avoid any confusion. Councillor Ralph.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, if that's the case, then it will be sort of in the last 12 months. If we could have the figures for the last 12 months, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, Michelle.
Thank you. Hopefully, I think you're aware it has gone out. There's 8 injunctions currently just being served on young people, so that was a real positive piece of work from Raptor. Just in terms of partners, so we have a monthly operational gang-related violence group, which the sergeant and the safeguarding lead within Raptor sit on. It's chaired by the council's sorry, I'm just trying to get a title right, Gangs and Child Exploitation Lead. It's also attended by our Youth Offending Service. They're probably one of the key partners at the moment around some of the work that goes on with Raptor, but also relevant social workers that might have cases open to them would attend to give updates. Alongside our housing colleagues, both because they are out in the community, but also for if any of the ones that are being looked at are council tenants. And certainly I know Raptor served a warrant recently, and that was then followed up by housing, going through notice seeking possession, etc., and taking really robust housing action as well alongside. British Transport Police are probably one of our key partners that sit round the table because of the nature of how gangs operate, use the train lines, etc. Community Safety Partnership sit round there, and local policing team through the Children and Young People's officers as well. And our integrated offender management team also have a seat round that table. They manage some of our high level offenders. I guess one of the other key partners that comes in around safeguarding is our adult safeguarding team, for if we've got any vulnerable victims, particularly in terms of cuckooing, etc. So hopefully that just gives you a flavour of some of the amount of partners that the Raptor team link into and we work with, and put together an action plan for each of our nominals in order to either go down the enforcement route through Raptor or through intervention and partnership working through either the schools or our intervention providers and workers.
Thank you, Michelle. That's very informative. Really appreciate that. Out of interest, if I could just follow up the bit where we if you like, try to sort of take them out of circulation or redirect them. How successful are we at this?
Oh, has that question come back to me?
I think so. Either Michelle or yourself. All right. Well,
again. Sorry. In terms of answering that question, in the long-term safeguarding and rehabilitation, that I wouldn't be able to answer that from my that wouldn't be my area of expertise.
Do we have any figures, Michelle, or ideas, please?
What we do is we've got a robust set of key performance indicators around our cohort that are managed through the operational gang-related violence group. I think it's been shared at a high level in some public meetings. It was certainly at the Health and Wellbeing Board. I can share that outside of the meeting, not a problem, so you can see what work has been done with those people on the nominals identified within our matrix.
Well, that'll be great. Thank you, Michelle.
Yeah, I've got the last 6 months report to the end of September, so I'll share that outside of the meeting.
Oh, that's excellent. Thank you. Does anyone have any more questions?
Yeah. Thanks for that presentation. My question is this: have you got which areas do you consider as the focal points or targets, in tackling those crimes in Thurrock? Which areas do you concentrate?
So the county line, by again by the way they work, can be the line might be controlled from in different areas. So we don't focus on a specific area. We focus on the lines that are causing the most harm or potential harm. So that's how we focus on it. So specific areas, it wouldn't come down to a specific area. By their virtue, they can operate because of the county lines moving the drugs from one area to another. It can be, although it can impact in Thurrock, it can also operate in different areas. So we focus on the impact and the harm that the group can cause, as opposed to geographical areas.
Michelle,
I think you wanted to come in on that as well, did you?
Yeah, just adding on that. In terms of prevention work, you'll be aware that most of our funding around prevention work comes down through the Violence and Vulnerability Unit, through the Police Fire Crime Commissioner. And they have done an awful lot of analysis around areas based on where offenders live, so not necessarily where they're offending, because as Tanya's just said, that can be quite wide, but in terms of where we can have the most input around the environment and particularly in schools, etc., within the localities there. So for Thurrock, there are 3 key areas identified for prevention work, and that is Grays, West Thurrock and Tilbury. And that's where we focus our efforts in the secondary schools, the primary schools, and where all our funding and resources go.
Thank you, Michelle. Councillor Chuckle.
Oh, thanks. One more question here. If I may ask, how many arrests have you carried out this year, or how many prosecutions have you carried out this year? If you have the figure, please.
Again, I don't have those figures to hand.
Could we perhaps get those figures for the next meeting, please? I'd say over the last 12 months. I'd be most grateful if you could. Is that possible, Michelle? Tanya?
Was that arrests and prosecutions for 12 months?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, can I ask you again, how effective is your team, in tackling drugs issues in Essex? Have you got the resources that you need? Thank you.
So the team are very effective in terms of tackling those issues, and it's because, as I've said, we prioritise the cases where we identify them as having the highest harm, but we focus on. So our method is to focus on the individuals who are controlling those lines. So while there may be people being, exploited at other levels, used as runners and so on, our method is to target the people who are controlling those lines to have the greater impact on sort of the activity of that line, that group.
You have another question, Councillor Sugar? Okay, thank you. Councillor Ralph, do you want to?
Yeah, thank you. It's probably more of a question for Michelle. Michelle, you said about the budget spending, and it was in those three key areas. I'm guessing that's intelligence-led, where you feel that you can make the most beneficial and impact in dealing with the situations going on. I'm just very aware that in the last few months, the quite high-profile arrests and raids are going on in the east of the borough. Is there a chance of spreading that prevention across there? I mean, I know budgets are going to be looked at, and that just, what sort of work can be done in the east to bring up to par?
No, it's very, very prescriptive, Councillor Ralph, coming down from the Violence and Vulnerability Unit. What I would say is they review the data annually, so there would be an opportunity to look at those areas again. I think when they did it, I think June, July time this year, so it will be refreshed and reviewed again next year. But not, we can't keep moving funding around as well. It's very... Once you commit to do a piece of work in those areas and you put your resources in, then you need to be able to see it through, and that needs time to embed as well.
Okay, Michelle, thank you. Councillor Ralph, you want to know a follow-up question?
Yeah, it's more about moving funding around. Surely if there's a particular area of concern, you can't ignore it just because you've dedicated the funding to another place, especially if it's been reviewed regularly. So then if you know it's going to benefit because there's a network of buildings, so unaccompanied asylum seekers could be moving into one borough, part of the borough that's not covered under those three things. And if there's no prevention in there, we could see them being more vulnerable just on a budget decision. So I'm just a bit confused over that. Sorry.
Sorry, I don't set the parameters around how I can spend that funding. That is set by the Violence and Vulnerability Unit. What we do have control of, obviously, is our local community safety partnership budgets. And so I can give you an example there. Earlier, try to think when it was, I don't know, about 6 months or so ago, we identified a number of issues in the East Tilbury area around Gobians Park, and we went down there and did a pop-up event, and we talked to lots of members of the community. We took our gangs lead down, and they observed And as a result of that, we worked with the youth team to put in some interventions in that park, and we funded that. So we do have small pots of money that we can respond to in situations like that, and put some short-term funding in. But, you know, the parameters through the Violence and Vulnerability Unit are very, very clearly set and defined.
Any more questions? No. So thank you very much, Tanya. I appreciate your presentation and your input. Also, I'd like to thank you and your team for the excellent results we've had recently in East Thurrock, and it's much appreciated. So please pass on our thanks and appreciation to all your colleagues in RAPTA and all the other groups who made up the team who made successful raids and outcomes.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Good evening and have a nice Christmas.
Bye.
Cheers.
Thank you, you too. Bye-bye.
I'm just going to go through get my agenda up again because it's on the computer and the written one is somewhere in the post. Bear with. Yeah, it'll be here after Christmas. There we go. Right, thank you. Our next item, item 6 on the agenda, is the unaccompanied asylum seekers annual update report. And who will be presenting, or will you be doing it as together? Okay, that's Mr. Luke Frome. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll go through my report again briefly, and if there's questions...
Could I ask you to move the microphone a bit closer to you, because I have trouble with my ears. And I can't hear. Thank you.
Hopefully that's better.
Thank you.
So yeah, in terms of a brief background, unaccompanied asylum-seeking children arrive in the UK, often following quite long and dangerous journeys where they're exposed to different types of abuse and exploitation. And it's the job of the local authorities to receive them into the UK, to assess their needs and to provide them with accommodation and care. Local authorities across the UK receive children from various different means. So they often can come in on trucks through the services that we have here in Thurrock, and more recently, large numbers are arriving in small boats into Kent in particular. So there are national quotas that are set for each local authority, which set out the numbers of looked after of unaccompanied asylum-seeking children, US, that we are responsible for providing care for in the longer term. That quota is set against the child population and has recently increased nationally in response to the large numbers of children coming into to the country via Kent into small boats. So those quotas were previously set at 0.07% and have increased to 0.1%. What that means for Thurrock is that we previously would have been responsible for 31 unaccompanied asylum-seeking children in terms of their long-term care, and since the increase in that quota, we're now responsible for up to 45 unaccompanied asylum-seeking children. So that's an increase in the population of an additional 14 unaccompanied asylum-seeking children. That has an impact in terms of the caseloads of social workers in Thurrock and personal advisors in our aftercare team, because many of the children who come in via this route are in the older age bracket from 16 up, and therefore they are they're approaching adulthood, and our aftercare service supports children in the transition into adulthood and beyond, up to 25 potentially. That also places a potential pressure on additional placement resources within the context of a national shortage of placements generally. As I alluded to, given the kind of established transport links, unaccompanied asylum-seeking children tend to enter through a limited pool of local authorities, and traditionally Thurrock has been a port of entry for unaccompanied asylum-seeking children, and there is a national transfer scheme that is set up to distribute the population of US across the country in an equitable way. So, again, more historically, what would have happened in Thurrock is young people would have come into Thurrock as a point of entry, and they would have transferred out from Thurrock to other local authorities in the eastern region. The national transfer scheme is now national rather than in the eastern region, and because of the high number of arrivals into Kent, we are starting to receive young people from Kent into Thurrock. So rather than being the initial point of entry, we're starting to now have experience of being the authority that kind of takes young people on as a kind of second point of entry and be responsible for their long-term care. One of the major issues in terms of harm for unaccompanied asylum-seeking children is around trafficking and exploitation. In some cases, children would have been supported to travel and arrive into the UK by organised gangs. And in some cases, gangs might have done that for a fee in terms of payment to get children into this country. In other cases, the gangs might have done that as part of a process where they move children into the UK to be further exploited in the UK. What we focus on in terms of social work practice in Thurrock is using those initial contacts with vulnerable children to really get alongside them, try to build relationships, try to very quickly build trust, so that they understand that they're coming into a situation where professionals around them are safe and trustworthy and will support them and will look after them appropriately. The way we do that is try to have direct visits between social workers and children, so we would visit them within 24 hours of their arrival. We would make sure we follow up again quickly with additional visits. We would start to pull together an assessment of their needs to help us to understand the individual child. What are their needs? What are their vulnerabilities? What are the risks? Are they a high risk of exploitation? Among other things. We really use the value of education, so there's a good education offer for those children. So even in the initial stages where we might be supporting them to get into a school or a local college, there's kind of online resources and things like that to engage them in constructive activities through the day, so that we know where they are, we know they're engaged in meaningful activity, and therefore this reduces the chance that they might go missing, they might leave placements without permission and things like that. So we have had really good success in terms of that work, and one of the things that we recently have been involved in is an Ofsted training event where our officers have been to provide training and present our kind of model of working with this cohort of young people to Ofsted inspectors, so that when they're going into other local authorities to look at the quality of practice, they understand what good practice looks like, what they should be kind of looking for, and the kind of questions they should be asking other local authorities on the basis of the way we work and some of the success that we've had. The report also refers to multi-agency safeguarding, which is an important aspect of the work that we do. We work to address issues of exploitation alongside police, alongside colleagues in Border Force, and we meet regularly in a meeting which is focused on organised immigration crime, and it's a meeting that's led by the police and attended by a number of partners. and that's a really good forum for sharing information, sharing which children might we expect to be coming into the country at this time, from what parts of the world might they be coming, which nationalities might be at an increased risk at this time, which nationalities might be a focus of kind of organised immigration crime once they arrive in the UK. And because we're able to kind of have that information regularly and good updates and communication between police colleagues, border force colleagues, it means that when our social workers are going out to have those initial meetings with children and those initial interactions, they can kind of bear that in mind. This child comes from this part of the world, and therefore I know I need to be mindful and vigilant that this child might be particularly vulnerable to exploitation. The report goes on to look at some of the data around the US population. Between April and November this year, there were 14 new unaccompanied asylum-seeking children that arrived into Thurrock. The total population of US at the end of November in Thurrock was 34 children. So we're starting to see a gradual rise above that previous limit of 31 that would have been our quota. I think as of today we've got 37 unaccompanied asylum-seeking children in Thurrock. So as to be expected, given the national quota changing, we're starting to see an increase in that cohort. The report also goes on to talk about unaccompanied asylum-seeking children who go missing. So between April and the end of October this year, there were 11 missing episodes involving unaccompanied asylum-seeking children. Although there were 11 missing episodes, that related to 3 children who went missing on more than one occasion. Importantly, there are currently no unaccompanied asylum-seeking children who are what we term long-term missing. So what that means is that when any child goes missing, there are certain procedures that come into play to make sure that we're liaising with police, liaising with other professionals, and we do that by having a series of strategy meetings with our partners where we're seeking to understand where the child might have gone and locate them as quickly as possible and understand any issues around risk. For unaccompanied asylum-seeking children who might go missing for long periods, we will follow those usual processes until we get to the point where we make a formal decision in a strategy meeting that we have exhausted all local lines of inquiry. And at that point, an unaccompanied asylum-seeking child will be deemed as long-term missing. So we still keep those cases under review. We meet with police, border force, Home Office colleagues every 6 weeks to see if there's any new information arising about those children. We've had some success where children have been located in all different parts of the country, and we've been able to re-establish contact with them and bring them back into Thurrock to be supported. But I think it's testament to the work that we do in those initial stages that we don't have any long-term missing children in Thurrock at the moment. So that's a really good thing to see. We conduct return-to-home interviews for children who go missing, and in terms of the cohort between April and October, a return-to-home interview was offered to all of those young people on each occasion that they went missing, and out of 3 young people who were missing, two of those young people accepted that and engaged in that process on each occasion. One of the young people refused to do that and didn't want to engage in that process. The report goes on to discuss information around budgets for supporting UASC, and it just explains that Thurrock receives a grant for caring for unaccompanied asylum-seeking children and care leavers, and will receive a grant of funding per person per night of £143, and the cost of supported accommodation placements for US ranges between £800 and £1,000 a week. The forecasts for the fiscal year 22-23 are around £1.259 million. As of the end of November, the aftercare service was supporting a total of 251 care experienced young people, and of those 251 people, 95 were former US. So quite a large percentage of our population where we're supporting young adults between the age of 18 and 25 are formerly unaccompanied asylum-seeking children. The current forecast...
Sorry, could you repeat that figure again? How much of a percent are they?
So we have total population of 251, and out of that, 95 are former US. So about a third, just over. Current forecast in relation to care leavers who do not have their asylum claims resolved is £212,000 for the year 22-23, and these services and costs are in line with our statutory duties as a local authority. So, I mean, in conclusion, clearly unaccompanied asylum-seeking children are at risk of harm through exploitation, and that's strongly linked with young people who go missing and repeatedly go missing. But actually, in terms of our current cohort of unaccompanied asylum-seeking children, you can see the impact of the good work that's going on to get alongside them, to engage them, to understand their needs and understand their risks, and in order to keep them safe. And that really comes across strongly in terms of those figures around the fact that children aren't going missing. If they are going missing, they're going missing for a short period of time, and we understand the reasons why they're going missing, and we don't have any long-term missing unaccompanied asylum-seeking children.
Okay, thank you for that. I've got a few questions, and I'll throw it open to the rest of the committee. But what is the sort of makeup or mixture of by gender of these unaccompanied asylum seekers? How many girls, how many boys, and also what parts of the world are they coming from, please? Generally,
overwhelmingly, they tend to be male. So by a large percentage, and in terms of the parts of the world, it does vary. So I think recently we've had a number of arrivals from Sudan, from Eritrea. There's a particular pattern in terms of unaccompanied asylum-seeking children from Albania currently. So I think when we're talking with our partners and thinking about kind of police intelligence and those particularly vulnerable groups, the cohort from Albania features very, very highly in those conversations.
And why? I mean, you've got the whole of Western Europe, or even Eastern Europe to an extent. They could settle in. What makes the UK the more attractive place to come to?
I mean, I'm not sure. I'm not sure that it's the fact that the UK is an attractive place. I think often what we find with these young people is their journey is perilous, and and what happens as a result of them setting out on the journey to leave their country of origin where they don't feel safe is lots of things that are beyond their control. So I'm not sure that young people leave their country of origin with the focus of saying, I want to come to the UK. And lots of unaccompanied asylum-seeking children do end up in countries all over Europe. Very often they are transported, as I said, by quite unscrupulous individuals who might promise one thing and take a sum of money and then deliver something very different. So it's not... The conversations that we would have with young people are not necessarily about why did you choose the UK, but they're more focused on kind of understanding the trauma of that journey, often the abuse and exploitation that's involved in that journey, and trying to sort of focus their minds on the fact that they're now in a place which is safe, where the people around them will look after them and are trustworthy. So in our experience, it's not necessarily an issue of choice where young people end up in the UK.
They just dumped here. Is that what you're saying? Or
Very often, again, they're involved with very unscrupulous people. So we hear stories where a family member might have paid somebody an amount of money in their country, and they set off and might end up in spending a few days in a country here, a few days in a country there. And they very often don't know what's going on. They don't really know what the plan is, what the destination is. They're very often afraid to kind of ask those kind of questions and speak up for themselves and things like that. So it's very difficult in that sense to kind of have a coherent narrative about, well, I left and this was my intention and this is where I ended up.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Chukwu, then Councillor Abbas, then Councillor Ralph. Councillor Chukwu.
Thank you for that presentation. My question is, you talk about the traumas they go through. How do you help in dealing with those traumas? And men, how do you encourage them or something like that? And the second question is, Councillor Collin has already asked about which countries they come from. My second question is that, sorry, I come up with that.
So in terms of trauma, I think probably the most helpful thing for them in terms of dealing with their trauma is to help them to settle in a place that's safe, and to establish routines, establish links with the community, establish support networks and relationships. The longer we can maintain a young person in an environment that is predictable, that is safe, that is supportive, where they're not judged, they don't have to live in fear, all of those things starts to undo some of the traumatic, the impact of their past trauma. There are specialist resources, there are counselling, for example, and things like that, which are more specific and can be provided by, there are particular resources that are available to unaccompanied asylum-seeking children. So there are specific pieces of work, but the crux of it really is to help them understand that you're now in a place where you don't have to keep moving, you don't have to keep running, you're safe, there's people around you that care about what happens to you. Because even if you have those more specialist pieces of work going on, if a child doesn't have that stable base, it's unlikely that those pieces of work will have a significant impact on their trauma and undoing their trauma.
Thank you.
Another one?
Yeah. When you sit with those kids, when you interview them, right, what sort of stories do you hear? What kind of stories do they tell you, or do you hear from them? Thank you.
So I can recall stories of a young person who was persecuted by a local militia in the country that they came from, where family members have been killed by those kind of groups, militia groups, where there's been retaliation and things like that, where their parent, as much as they love them and they care about them, kind of say it's not safe for you to be here. And although we're talking about journeys that in themselves are dangerous and traumatic, etc., they're felt to be less dangerous than that young person staying in the local community or their country of origin. Some young people talk about their religious beliefs and being persecuted for their beliefs or their sexuality and not feeling safe in their country of origin because of their sexuality. So there's a range of stories on the part of unaccompanied asylum-seeking children, like to take the step to leave your country of origin and take on that journey at quite a young age. Very often the motivation for doing that is obviously significant.
Now it's Councillor Abbas.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Officer, for your report. First of all, thank you. You know, you just mentioned Ofsted. They presented your report as a model. So thank you for your good work and well done to you and to your team. So my question is, what happened to these children once they turned over 18, or if their asylum claim is refused or accepted? So what are the scenarios after these three cases?
So at 18, they become the responsibility of our aftercare service. And our aftercare service will ensure that they have somewhere to live. They will offer them opportunities for education or employment, and they will support them potentially up until the age of 25. Part of the work that we do is to support them with their asylum claim. And so some of that is about working with the Home Office to kind of get to a final decision where they do have permission to remain in the country. And we will help them in terms of kind of advocating for them in that respect, etc. If they do receive that decision, then we will help them into, you know, they have other options that open up to them, like being able to obtain more stable long-term housing, employment opportunities, and things like that. So all of that would be under the umbrella of the aftercare service, and there will be a personal advisor allocated to them who would work alongside them and support them to address all of those needs. For some young people, they do receive a negative decision from the Home Office, and in those cases, there is a human rights assessment that is carried out, and that assessment looks at the withdrawal of services and support from that young person. And seeks to kind of, because they don't have entitlement to public funds, it seeks to kind of draw a line between how far back we scale that support without breaching their human rights. So there are certain things that have to be in place for human beings, such as somewhere to live, but there are certain things that they wouldn't be entitled to, such as education, employment, benefits, all of those things. So if the case gets to that stage, the case would be held in the aftercare service, but we would start to have conversations with Home Office colleagues about what happens from there. So one of the things, for example, might be voluntary return. So some of the conversations that our staff would be having with those young people would be about accepting voluntary return, what support they might get to return to their country of origin, what their support network might look like in their country of origin, and things like that. What we try to do as part of pathway planning, which is the regular planning that we do for any young person who's over 16, for our unaccompanied asylum-seeking children, we have what we call triple planning. So triple planning looks at, what is the plan for you while you're waiting for a decision from the Home Office? What is a plan for you if you have a positive decision from the Home Office? And what is the plan for you if you have a negative decision from the Home Office? So that kind of planning happens right from the start of them coming into the country. So the idea is that if they do have a negative decision, you know, they will be very well aware of what the implications of that are, and we should have an understanding about, for example, would they be inclined to accept a voluntary return to their country of origin? Who would be there to receive them? What would that support look like, etc.?
Thank you much. Thank you for your answer. You know, obviously there are two parts to this. You know, one, obviously we understand those are very vulnerable people, you know, to come through very difficult situation. But then there is a part which lies with the Home Office. So why do we spend our resources communicating with Home Office what's supposed to be their job in terms of voluntary returns and those kind of things?
I mean, we have a duty to these young people as corporate parent, and you know, the Home Office have their role in terms of you know, that whole process, and if there's a negative outcome, how that's followed up by the Home Office. But we you know, it's incumbent upon us to make sure that young people have somewhere to live, that they have food. So there are basic necessities that they need as human beings that we're responsible for as their corporate parent, and that's set out in the legislation.
Hi, yeah, just another one. You know, you just mentioned here in your report, like we receive a grant of £143 per night, you know. And then we also notes here in another, there's an overspend, you know, of 0.016 million. So because if you see these 143 per night into 7, so it's like 1,000 plus, and then you mentioned like, you know, our spending cost is around 800 to 1,000 pounds. So how we come up overspending on these budget when we have extra money, even though I've just seen like we also received 2,000 pounds from I don't know, from the Home Office or from the government for initial 3 months. So how can we justify this overspend?
I'll take that one. So the grant that we receive largely covers the cost of providing a placement to the young people. So that might be a foster placement, that might be supported accommodation, depending on their age and the level of need. However, there are additional costs to the local authority that we would incur for all looked after children, the provision of a social worker, the provision of an independent reviewing officer, all of those things, and the aftercare service. So although we get a grant, it would never cover all of our costs, and that would explain the difference.
Thank you. Councillor Ralph?
Yeah, thank you for your report. I really appreciate the work that your team does, and with the increase of children coming into your service, do you feel that you have the capability to cope with numbers within staffing levels? Because it must be increasing your pressure. And along the same line of that, are the children that you're getting now, have they had their health assessment done? Or is that be something that's been backlogged? Because we know we have a bit of a problem with that area at the moment. Thank you.
So yes, I mean an increase in the numbers of children in our care impacts all of our resources. So there's more social work time, there's more oversight, there's more placement required. So it's an increase in everything. And I think one of the things that's perhaps unique to this group of children is the intersection between central government decision and local authority impact. So a decision to raise the limit, not just raised it for Thurrock, that raised it for every local authority everywhere. What it didn't do is create new foster placements, it didn't create new social workers, it didn't create all of those things. So yes, we're feeling some of those pressures, but in Thurrock we are very careful to monitor the caseloads of our social workers, and we actually, because of the other work that we're doing around making sure that early help services are in place for resident families and effective educator work, our actual total number of children in care has remained fairly static. So although we have an increase in this cohort of children, other cohorts decreasing means that our caseloads are roughly around the same. So we're okay on a resource level at this point in time. If it continues to increase, we'd need to review that situation, I think. In terms of the initial health assessments, yes, I think that this cohort are as affected as any other by the capacity issues there. What we are finding is that it depends very much on the area that they're placed in, because not every child who arrives in Thurrock is placed in Thurrock, because it depends on the availability of the home or the foster home on the particular day. When we were receiving children directly into care because they'd arrived through the port or its services, as Luke was describing, it's unexpected, you can't plan for it, that you have to make the best decision you can with the resources on the day. With the transfer scheme, we're getting notice, which has enabled us to think about the placements, but it also enables us to notify partners in health to say, we have these children coming up, and we're starting to use that in our IHA tracking process.
Brilliant, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. Any more questions, anyone? Councillor Chukwu.
Thank you. How long does it take for Home Office to determine their cases? I mean, individual case. How long does it take?
That is a very difficult question to answer clearly. I think it depends very much on the circumstances of the case. It's been a massive impact in terms of COVID, in terms of Home Office making decisions in a timely way, but it is very individual. We do have a specific link person in the Home Office that our aftercare team meets with on a regular basis, so that we can kind of track and make sure that these cases are progressing through the stages, and if we have particular concerns about a case being delayed, we can raise those individually with the Home Office, but it's really impossible for me to say, to give a figure. It is very individual.
One more time. In case of accommodation, right, how do you cope with that?
Sorry, say that.
I mean, in case of accommodation, accommodating those kids, or these unaccompanied asylums, how do you cope with accommodation problems in Thurrock?
I mean, at this stage, I mean, as we said, like shortage of accommodation is a national issue, and so we work very hard. Not necessarily my service, but we have a placements team who work very hard to establish links with providers to be able to place young people. Often they're in the older age range, and so we're placing them into semi-supported accommodation rather than foster placements. And we do have a number of providers in the local area that are available and can provide. So our placements team are very good at what they do. They understand, where the availability is. They've got good established links with the providers of placements, and they are able consistently to find placements at very short notice if required. So in terms of this cohort, we haven't had issues around finding the kind of placements that we require for unaccompanied asylum-seeking children. I mean, as Dan said, if the quota continually rises, then that may become an issue in the future. But at the moment, we have a very skillful placements team that are able to kind of identify placements and provide.
Councillor Chukwu?
Yeah.
Okay.
We have a case in Chadwell whereby some of these, let me use the word refugees, some of them actually were, being housed somewhere in Chadwell, and the neighbors, they were just raising up complaints, What I'm asking is this, do you encounter issues with some of these refugees? Do they get hostile receptions in where they live?
No, I don't think it's a unless Luke feels differently. No, I don't think it's a common issue in terms of direct hostility. So where we are placing children, we have contracts with particular providers, and there's things that we expect in those contracts for them to deliver, and that includes, thinking about where they put their supported accommodation provision, and we can risk assess when we're placing. Often because we're using a lot of those placements, we know when children are coming in and when they're moving on, and we know the groups of children within the home. So we're able to try and do some matching, we would call it, so trying to find children who naturally might get on or share some cultural background. And because we know those placements, we know that the area is safe and what the impact on the community has been already, which helps us manage some of those tensions. I don't pretend that probably unaccompanied asylum-seeking children don't face racism and other issues as anyone would, but I think we are very careful with where we place our children.
Michelle's been waiting patiently. Sorry, Michelle. Oh.
That's all right. I know the issue that Councillor Chukwu was referring to, but I just wanted to chip in on what Dan said and really offer a community safety perspective. And I think in the last 5 years, it's been brought to my attention about one young person who was an unaccompanied asylum seeker who was facing issues in the community. And what I would say was it was very swiftly dealt with, very well managed by the housing team. And in fact, about 6 months ago, they were looking to place somebody in that area again, and they came to us and the police to get a view. So, they really do sound out and check before they place as to where might be suitable or where there might be some more tensions in communities than other areas. So just wanted to back up what Dan said from my point of view, that we don't come across those issues at all, or very, very rarely. It's not to say they're not happening, but I think all our teams as well that work with them are aware of how to report, signs to look for, and how to support people as well.
Thank you, Michelle. Much appreciated. Any more questions? Councillor?
It's not actually a question. It's more of an offer, I guess. The Chair, for us, this is a really important subject that we're both keen on, yourself. I hope our partners and the rest of our teams understand that we're there to help them and support them. And if you ever felt that you were under pressure, that you can come to us. A part of these committees is that we call people in a lot. And sometimes you get a really good success story that you've really gone above and above to achieve something. I'd like to personally hear those success stories as well. And I just think if we can get that more of an opportunity to meet with these groups more regular, even if it's just for a brief update of something that you want. I don't know if that fits in with our work programme, Chair.
I think we'll have space in the work programme for that, yes. But, I'd like to concur with Councillor Abbas's congratulations and appreciation on behalf of the whole of the committee of the Ofsted inspection and the glowing report you got, and deservedly so, because I'm sure results like that don't come easily. It takes an awful lot of work and effort, and also it's got the knock-on effect that I read from the report that it makes Thurrock now an unfavourable place for further trafficking because everybody's on it. So the prevention. That's what this committee is about. Is actually working. So kudos to you all and everyone who works with you. Well done. Thank you. Any more questions, anyone? No, Michelle, Cheryl. Okay then.
Nothing from me. Thank you.
Councillor Sugar, one more question.
Yeah, thanks for that. When you're talking about integration, these people, they come from different countries. Do they have any problem in integrating into the community?
I think to a varying degree, really. I think one of the things that we try to do is kind of make links and make culture appropriate links. So we do think about if young people come from similar of the same country of origin, can we place them together alongside each other in placements and things like that, so that they are placed alongside people with who have share the same first language, for example, something as practical as that. But yes, there are always young people who struggle to kind of integrate into the community. And that's why it's so important that we kind of get alongside them and do effective assessments of those young people as early as possible, because we want to be able to make sure that we understand what those difficulties might be, where they arise from, and therefore we can find the appropriate support to kind of put in place to make it as easy for them as possible. So, the language barrier is an obvious example, and we have an array of our unaccompanied asylum-seeking children who are engaged in the ESOL programme and learning how to kind of use English. We use interpreting services so that we can communicate all of that stuff. So, yes, I think is the short answer. We do have those difficulties, and we're very good at kind of identifying them and wrapping around support when we find them.
There's no more questions before Councillor Chuckle chimes in again. I'll say thank you very much, gentlemen, for coming tonight, and thank you for all your hard work. It's much appreciated. And please pass on our thanks and appreciation to everybody in the team you work with. Thank you. Before we moved on to the final bit, you're very welcome to go now, if you wish to, because it's the boring stuff, the boring admin stuff. Thank you. The last item, thank you very much. The last item on the agenda is the work plan. So then, looking at the work plan, got to the wrong end. Does anybody have any particular things they want to put on the work plan for next year? Silence.
I was just trying to think. We did say something last week. I can't remember what it was we put on there.
So we're looking at final event strategy, work programme. It's a fairly light for February. That's the February one. We could ask. I had two things on my mind, Michelle, if it's possible. One was a repeat to see the gentleman who dealt with, I cannot remember his name, but we had a Teams meeting, and there's only a couple of us who actually attended. I'd like that gentleman back. He was specialising in boys, mainly boys, protection. I didn't have a chance to look it up, the meeting, but it was a Teams meeting, and there was only 2 or 3 of us actually there. And I cannot, for the life of me...
The training that you had on men's abuse?
Yes, that's right. If we could ask the gentleman to come back again, it was a very, very informative discussion and presentation. But
is that to be in the public for a meeting though? Because obviously that was training delivered behind
closed
the public
doors.
arena.
Yeah. Is he allowed to talk in public, or give us a breakdown of what he's looking at?
I don't know. You'd have to approach him to ask him that. There's also a cost implication for that as well.
Oh right.
Just to advise you.
I didn't realise. I beg your pardon. We was also looking at, well, I think next year is going to be, from the emails and stuff that's been sent to me, reports about satanic ritual abuse and things along that line. Do we have anything, somebody who can come down and talk to us about that? Or is that all part and parcel of another department?
That would be... the local Safeguarding Children's Partnership possibly may be able to talk around that, or Children's Services.
Thank you. If it's possible, if they've got a presentation, would be interested. Could we have it in for the February one, please? If that's... Does anybody have anything? Councillor Ralph?
Yes, Chair. I'd like if we could have a update from our local community policing teams and neighbourhood teams on the conditions of knife crime and knife carrying with our youths within Thurrock.
Can we do that, Michelle?
I can ask. I mean, Tanya could have probably given you some updates on that, but yeah, I can ask local policing team if they'd be able to provide information in relation to knives.
Yeah, really after figures and that facts and figures. So Tanya wasn't prepared. Right. Yeah. So
okay. So can I? We've just had a report written to us. Unfortunately, it took quite a while to pull together, so we actually got it in a couple of months ago for 2021.
Okay.
Okay, and the analyst has taken the action to redo that piece of work for 2022. I'm not sure that I would have it in time to bring to the next committee meeting, and obviously I don't want to duplicate work, and she is doing it, and it's a brilliant piece of work because it tells you exactly how many knives have been recovered, who the victims were, who the perpetrators were, the profiles, etc. So it's a really good informative piece of work, but I wouldn't be able to commit that would be produced by February and in time for us to turn into a report for you. But that piece of work is going on. And also, obviously, we've got the serious violence duty. So that might be something that's of relevance and interest to this board. It is the guidance is due out imminently. I'm assured by the Home Office it'll be out before Christmas. The joint strategic needs assessment in relation to it has to be completed by the end of March. and then that has to be published alongside our strategy by January the 31st, 2024. So we wouldn't be in a position to bring the strategy to you until September, October time, but the joint needs assessment would be maybe something that could would be of interest to this committee. But again, timelines would be after March.
Okay, Councillor Ralph, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I guess what I'm looking for, Michelle, is to meet the people that are communicating with our youth. I want to be able to sit in the same room with them and talk to them, get their experiences, what are the youth saying to them, just so the board, the committee here understands their view on it, their picture of it. I don't know who would be best to ask to come and talk to us.
That would be probably the children and young people's officers and the gang-related violence officers. Would they be able to do that not in a public forum so that they could have those discussions with you?
Lucy?
We could always have that in a closed session, so we could always, you know, if there's other things on the meeting, if there's a public meeting, we'd have that bit first, and then we could close the meeting and take it offline, and then we could have a closed session, not being live streamed or recorded, etc.
No, the last meeting we had, we said that it would be a good idea if we had some pink papers, and we have a public meeting then a private meeting, especially if we're talking about Home Office and talking to the Home Office. Have you heard anything back from the Home Office? I haven't. Okay. Obviously not. No. All right then. So we'll get the figures hopefully, and we're looking at. We had 6 months ago an item, communication strategy in relation to prevent counter-terrorism and extremism. Perhaps we could have an update on that in February, because I think that would be quite useful. Is that okay, Michelle? Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Michelle?
I can. Yes, sorry, I'm just trying to think how many other reports I've got to do for the Overview and Scrutiny Committee as well next month.
I'm just sorry to cut in.
Cheryl?
Sorry, I'm just wondering if that might be better combined with the strategy one, Michelle, and do it at the same meeting. I think it will perhaps flow better.
Yeah, could be.
We can have it in a closed session if you like.
What do you think, Michelle? The Prevent Comms plan, if we did it at the same time as the strategy, because obviously we're extending that, aren't we? Because the
so
review.
strategy's not due now till April 2024. We've deferred it for a year to be in line with the contest review.
Oh, yes, that's going to be too long.
We have got the benchmarking review with the LGA annually review our benchmarks criteria, and that's due in February, and that might be a better driver to bring a report on Prevent back to you, because that was what initiated the comms piece, and we'd be able to include that, and plus they're looking at activity around disruptor and venue hire, etc., and we could give you a full update after we'd had that review in February.
I'm just concerned it's going to be a bit light in February, because we've only got final event strategy on there, and plus the work programme. It would be just nice to have a couple of items. We'll be able to have anything at all for February.
We can bring. I thought we were going to bring the officers in to talk about knife crime.
Sorry, I wasn't sure if I. Yeah, we did. Okay, thank you. I wasn't sure we'd agreed that. Sorry. Would you like? Anyone else got anything they'd like to add? No? Okay, then thanks, Michelle. Oh, sorry, Lucy has.
So I just want to confirm, sorry, before we close the meeting. So we've got the update on knife crime, local community police from the local community policing team or whoever deals with that. So that's on for February. And then the LGA benchmark review on Prevent as well, potentially. Is that what we've added? Could I just confirm that, sorry? No? Oh, okay. No, that's fine.
It would be nice to have one more thing, because it'll be a bit slim pickings there. Can Seric make a return visit? Or was that too soon?
We could always take this discussion offline if you want, and then I can send an email around maybe, and then if anyone has any suggestions, in the next couple of weeks that they'd like to add,
I think that will work better because everyone's racking their brains to see if they can fit it all in, especially Michelle. Sorry, I don't want to give you a headache, Michelle, so we'll put it down to a discussion, or just add to your headaches. So we'll have a discussion about this offline and we'll do it by email as Lucy. Cheryl?
Yeah, I was just going to support that decision actually, because we do need to kind of spread these out a bit because of officers drafting reports, etc. I'm also mindful that there's nobody here from Children's. I'm not sure what their other work programme looks like for the rest of the year, so I think that would be sensible to agree that offline. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Cheryl. Much appreciated. So that's agreed. Then we'll sort this out offline, and that's the end of our Hidden Extreme Harms Committee meetings for this year. So I'd like to thank you all for your attendance and all your hard work during the year, especially our hard-working council officers who we seem to put upon more than we should. So I do apologise for giving you all the headaches, but it's everything you do is much appreciated, and I think we all support that as well. So for those who do, I wish you all a very happy Christmas, and for everyone else, a happy New Year as well. Thank you. Good night.
I wish you the same. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks.